Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to Alaka'i, the podcast. I'm your host, Emmie Siebert. Sadly, I have no co-host, but I am joined with Emarie Majors. We're really excited to have her to talk about some health things and wellness and whatnot. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah. So Emarie used to work for Alaka'i. How long ago was that?
I think it was about 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a good
Awesome.
time.
Well, Emarie is from Hamilton, Montana, and she actually graduated in April.
Yes.
And now she's working full-time as a human resource assistant at Kahuku Medical Center and doing tutoring and photography on the side.
Yeah.
Cool. I should have read that through first. I feel like I butchered that.
You're good.
Human resources.
I know, it's tricky. I was just going to put HR assistant.
I probably still would have found a way to mess it up. So.
That's good.
No worries. And also funny, so Emarie, my name's Emmie.
Yes.
Her name is Emarie.
And I go by Emmie.
Yes.
Yes, but only from my close friends and family members.
Right.
So when I meet another Emmie, I'm like,
what?
No.
Yes.
You're accepted though. It's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. And I guess my full name is Emmie. So
And that's fair. I'll give it to you.
There's nothing else,
Yeah.
really. I guess my middle name's Lucille, so people used to call me Emmy Lou. So if I
Oh my
had
gosh,
to differentiate.
I went by Emmy Lou.
No way!
Yeah. I'm serious. All my family, like my dad's side's from Texas. They're like,
I'm
Emmy
from
Lou.
Texas.
Okay.
Why is this podcast? It's just gonna be us like
That's great.
finding so many connections. That's so. Is your middle name Lucille?
It's Marie.
Why would I?
You know what? I wish it was Lucille. Wait, my middle
obviously.
name's not Marie. It's Claire. I was thinking of my other friend named Emmy. And her middle name is Marie. I'm just like body snatching here, I guess. Just
Oh my gosh, I cry when I laugh. I don't know why that
Oh,
was
it's
so
excellent.
funny to me. Oh my
I'm
gosh.
like, no, I lied to you. That's not who I am.
Oh my gosh. I have the giggles right now. I
Excellent.
need to pull it together. Okay, well, so we're excited to have Emarie on,
Yes.
and so you may know Emarie from just having the coolest food photography pages. We've used her photos for, well, she started the Foodie Friday for Alaka'i for the Instagram, and we've attempted to bring it back, but it's just not the same.
That's okay.
Yeah, so what got you into, in general, healthy living, and then maybe explain some of the photography for food and also, yeah, that stuff.
What got me into healthy living? That's a good question. I think it's always been really fascinating to me. I think the more you get into nutrition and health, the more you learn about this thing that you have, like this body, and you're like, oh, it has all these functions I didn't know about that you can sort of like activate with different foods and exercises. So I've always found it fascinating. My family always cooked a lot and like various different things growing up, so we were always experimenting, I guess. But as far as getting more into food photography, when I went to like another university before I came back to BYU-Hawaii.
Oh, sweet.
And I was taking some photography classes there, and I was really into portraiture. And I feel like my professor approached me and she's like, wow, you're like really gifted at this. And you have
Wait,
these,
what
like,
is portraiture?
It's just like a single photo, like individual portrait of someone. But I like to do like really dramatic or creative things and angles and colors and stuff. And
Okay.
so I was like exploring that, and you know, you have to buy different makeup or props or backgrounds, which is all really fun and great, but then you can't reuse it, especially if you have like a very, I don't know,
Like really specific
interesting,
shoot,
yeah.
right?
But when we were doing different genres within that class, we had like one day that was a photo. You were supposed to do, your homework was like food photography.
Oh.
And I remember that, like making, I got like blue spirulina and made like a smoothie bowl and put coconut, like all these flakes and stuff on it. And I just loved the artistry of food photography and how I could make it totally mine. And what I made was like of use afterward. Like I didn't have this leftover makeup and props and stuff that I couldn't use again.
Right.
I mean, I guess I could have, but like it made more sense to me. It was like more practical.
Right.
And I love the idea of making art and photography that sends messages. And even though you wouldn't think food does that, to me, it does because I'm like, oh, look at this like healthy, beautiful photo. Like, let's eat like this. Let's do this. Let's like
Right.
incorporate this into our life. So I think, yeah, nutrition and photography being so fascinating, like when I do it together, it just like fulfills all my senses. I'm like,
Yeah, that's so
it makes me
cool.
really happy. So,
Yeah, I love that, like
yeah.
finding two things that might not go together but totally
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
you know.
And it was, yeah, I still do it as like a hobby and
Mhm.
like a personal interest. I just like to make wild food
Make
photography.
wild
Yeah.
food. What's like
Yes.
the wildest
The
food?
wildest I made squid ink pasta once. It's like this black pasta dyed with
What?
squid ink and then I bought squid and like grilled it and it made like a cool like seafood dish or something.
What?
I don't know if I ever posted that one. That one was cool. I like to find unique ingredients and things like just recently when I was making a salad shoot this past month, I was like scouring the aisles of Whole Foods and I found like black garlic. It's like I think it's fermented, but it's really good. It tastes like balsamic vinegar.
Oh my
But I was like stuff
gosh.
like that I just wouldn't really go out of my way to get unless I was making something or I wouldn't know about. So,
Right. Yeah, because
it's
you get to
fun.
really like food is art.
Yes, food is art.
Is
Yeah, it's
wow,
fun.
this is so inspiring to me right now.
Yeah.
Because I love cooking,
Yeah.
but with what you got going on, I'm scratching the
Oh,
surface.
I'm not. I would hesitate to call myself like a chef or a cook or anything.
Right.
I do it a lot, but my friends have joked and said like I'm more of an assembler. Like I'll
Oh,
find ingredients and just like throw it together. I
right.
don't know a ton of the science behind cooking.
Right.
I know little things here and there,
Yeah.
but I like to make food, but I don't always do it based off of like flavor profiles, which is
Okay.
also interesting because getting into food photography when I'm like planning a shoot, I'm thinking first off, like, what colors do I want in this dish? And it's
Okay.
so funny because I've learned that different colors, like fruits and vegetables, use colors to signal what nutrients or what substances they
Oh.
have. So a lot of red things have like anti-inflammatory antioxidants in them and then like a lot of orange things are like helping with your endocrine system like hormone production and stuff. So like
Oh.
everything, it's not like exactly the same, but you do find a lot of similarities within like colors. And then when you pair them together, so like complementary colors, those foods also taste good together, or they like the nutrients work really well together. So I'll like create a dish and be like,
Right.
okay, I have this dark leafy thing. I really want like a like intense purple to go with it. And just based off of like the different ideas that I have and like somewhat flavor profiles, it like goes together really well. And the flavors are like perfect. So I think that's like
Wow.
been the coolest thing is like when you think about food from an artistic perspective, which we're wired to do as humans,
Right.
like our ancestors weren't like very always knowledgeable about like
Yeah.
the nitty-gritty nutritional facts of their
Yeah.
food, but like their bodies and like we're wired to like recognize, okay, like these blue fruits might be good for my brain and I need to go like hunt out blueberries so I can have better cognitive function. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they didn't have those thoughts, but your body like
Just
picks up those
naturally does that.
signals. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Wow.
cool. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I've never thought of like looking at food from like a color and art perspective,
Mhm.
but it also checks the boxes of like nutrition.
Mhm. There are some times where I could get carried away or like sidetracked 'cause I'm like, no, it just the aesthetic matters. Like I don't
Right.
care, but it does end up tasting good most of the time.
Most
It
of the
just
time.
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so switching gears with kind of a more geared question about healthy living and
Mhm.
lifestyles.
Mhm.
This is like an interesting question, so I probably will just honestly read it.
Yeah.
But it seems to be, especially in like the most recent times on social media, there's like a huge health kick
Mhm.
to the general public. Um, and like, and it's so interesting how people are like, oh, like go vegan, that's the way to go, or like go
Mm.
plant based, or the
Yeah.
carnivore diet, or keto is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I think that stuff is so fascinating, so
Yeah.
I've tried to learn a lot about it. But what are your thoughts on people who are, I guess the upsides and downsides
Yeah.
are things to look out for when you're trying to live in a healthier way.
I think there are two ways you can approach this and that you should approach this. The first one might sound a little cynical, but I do think like the industry has realized that you can prey on people's insecurities and like tell them that they have to like look or eat or live a certain way and then entice them to buy products to like achieve that.
Right.
Um and we've also realized I think as we are collecting more data and progressing more scientifically the how like unwell our society is. So it's I think part of it is also geared in a good way to be like, hey, let's make some changes and like feel better and be healthier,
Right.
live longer. But I think it's also really fun. So that's like the tricky part. Like you don't want to
Right.
get totally sucked in, but there are some downsides depending on how you approach a healthier diet and exercise because it's very easy. I think you can potentially develop body dysmorphia and or disordered eating.
Yeah.
Um, it can be bad. It can be like a little blip, you know, and you're like, okay, like I learned my lesson, like how I need to like better my relationship with food or with exercise. And I know it sounds very elementary, but just like not comparing yourself to others and your favorite like fitness influencer. I think
Right.
influencers like play a role and like they can be very inspiring and helpful, but at least for me, there was a time a couple years ago where I just was so like confused and like bogged down by every single image I ever saw of a woman was like a certain body shape and body type, and it tended to be like very athletic and lean, and like that's a beautiful thing and like that's great, and if you're healthy and look like that, like that's great too. um but I remember one day I decided, I was like, man, my like body image is like really low, and I kept comparing myself to this ideal woman.
Yeah.
And I made a Pinterest board of women who were like curvier or taller. Like, I didn't see a lot of like just women who looked like me who
Yeah.
were like also being shown as being beautiful in whatever sort of capacity. And so, like, I made my own Pinterest board. It was even hard to find women who I thought like had my body type who were like my same ethnicity or even like, you know, like I
Right.
think it's hard for everybody who's not represented,
Yeah.
like, which is, I think, a large majority of people.
Yeah. Most people are not. Yeah.
Yeah,
Represented because average
there's
is
like
no
one
one.
type, yeah. But I made that Pinterest board and I would wake up every day and that was the first thing I looked at to be like, okay, these bodies are beautiful. And I hate that I'm even talking just about bodies, but like
Right.
I had to because like that part of my mind was like kind of broken.
Right.
And when I looked at that, then throughout the day, like even if I saw an ad for like Kleenex, it was like the model was like, you know, a
Just
supermodel. And
gorgeous
so and I was
little.
like, oh
Yeah.
wait, I know because this morning I like reminded myself that like there's so many shapes and types of beauty.
Right.
Um but it is also okay to like want to get into health and fitness because you want to look good and like you want to be confident. Like I think people can go too hard on either side and be like, no, like don't matter, don't pay attention at all, like what you
Right.
look like. And as much as I think like we can and should maybe strive for that, it's kind of inevitable that we're gonna notice. Like
Yeah.
we live in a world of cameras and mirrors and
Totally.
so
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. That is such an interesting balance of just finding beauty with who you are right now, and
Yeah.
also like finding beauty in the process of becoming something
Yes,
else.
yeah. And it's, I think, really great if you can do both. If you can be
Right.
excited about like the vision you have for like the things you want to do, the like types of exercises and like performance goals you have
Right.
and that you want to achieve, and be like super grateful for like where you're at and really
Yeah.
like love on yourself in that way. Um, I know this past year, it's also funny because you never know people's like full story because like they could be saying like, oh, this exercise does XYZ, but like it could just be genetics and, you know, or it could be like
Yeah,
very
that's true.
unhealthy like dieting. This earlier this year, probably around graduation time, I had like a major anxiety attack, like big time. And I've had anxiety before, and this was
Yeah.
like panic attacked, and then like I had anxiety for a couple weeks, but that like kick started when I get anxiety. my appetite's like gone.
I do that
Do
too.
you?
The same
Okay.
thing.
But and like I knew I like had extra energy because my body's in like fight or flight mode. So I was like,
Yes.
hey, we're gonna go on the Stairmaster because I like have to do. I like need an outlet.
Right.
But I'm like not hungry. I'm like I know I need to eat. But at the same time, I was like, hey, I'm gonna use this as like a maybe I'll start like in a calorie deficit phase because I've been wanting to like get shredded for a while. You know,
Yeah,
like I was
okay.
like I'm gonna use this, but I proceeded to go on to like I did like months of a calorie deficit in a very healthy way
Okay.
because I there's been times in the past where I hadn't done it
Right.
healthy, but I was like only losing a little bit over like a longer period of time. I was still going to the gym, eating like really good foods and stuff. But I think I was still restricting too much because I had started with an anxiety attack and like
Okay.
wanted like even if you typed in my like height and weight and age and like activity level into like a TD calculator, do you know
Right.
those? TDEE.
I don't know
It's like
this.
total daily energy expenditure. It's something you can go
Oh.
on and see like how many calories you need just to like maintain and how many you would need to like bulk or cut.
Okay.
But like if you were to go in, type in my information and like look at like what I should safely, what calorie. Also, sorry if calories are like triggering to people. I don't
Oh.
know. Like I think it's just
Right.
whether you like it or not, like in other times in your life, like it can be good or unhealthy for you to pay
Right.
attention to. But if you go in and see like what the lowest thing for me to like be consuming was, I was like just for like what is it called? Like basal metabolic rate. It's like the amount of calories you just need to like stay alive.
Okay.
I was like eating that
Oh
amount.
my
And you
gosh.
should not like
Right.
but
You
I
should not
didn't
go that low.
I just wasn't I don't know. I started from like a spot of like having like no hunger
Right.
and I thought I was doing it super healthy, but I was like eating too restricted
Right.
for a long period of time and it like messed up my hormones. I was having
Oh.
like yeah. So like I was having fun, like budgeting, eating healthy, like chasing these fitness goals again and like seeing more muscle definition. But I think it's also important to like I just want to like tell people, especially women, to like be really careful because again, sorry, you can cut this out of the podcast if you don't want to talk about it, but I feel
Right.
like it's just
Yeah, it's great. This is
like
good to
it like messed up my period. It like messed
Mhm.
with my cycle, messed with my brain. Like I
Yeah.
was getting like super tired in like my luteal phase and I looked this up afterward, but like being so restricted like can lengthen a woman's menstrual cycle like
Really?
52 days. Like something insane and can cause disordered eating because then you're
Right.
like binging because you're in survival mode. So it's just
Right.
all this crazy stuff and like nobody like I was following all these like health and nutrition and
And you're probably thinking that you're just
doing
doing
it
it
right.
right.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm doing the healthy thing. Like I'm doing it like long term and I'm just doing this for fitness. Like,
Right.
but because of the place that it started from,
Right.
it like set me up to like I didn't want to let myself
Mm.
eat more than I thought I should be. I don't know if that
Right.
makes sense. But then yeah, it messed me up and I've like never heard a woman online be like, "Oh, like I tried to do this fitness thing and I had to stop because like I got totally sabotaged."
Yeah.
Like, but
Yeah.
that
Should be
was
talked
a
about
big
more.
like word vomit. But that is just to say like you can take those things and just learn from them and
Right.
like you don't have to be like, "Oh, I failed," and like, you know, whatever, but our
Yeah.
bodies are built for a reason and like I'm glad my body was like, "Hey,
We're
we're
not
gonna
doing good.
override what your willpower is doing because like
Right.
we think we're like in a famine or something
Yeah.
like that."
They're like, give me what I
Yeah,
need.
yeah. It was helpful
Yeah.
though. Do you know Dr. Kate here? She's like,
Yes.
I went and like saw her and did a bod pod
Yeah, I've
test.
done that before.
It's so good,
Yeah,
so
it
good.
is.
And I was talking to her about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like you can get like multiple different types of like disordered eating if like you go too hard in that, and like it's okay." And when she told me, she's like, "Just eat like protein 4 times a day, blah blah blah, and lift heavy." And when I heard those words, lift heavy, that's like what I'd been doing before, but when I started in a deficit, you like naturally can't lift as much.
Right.
It like lit a fire in me. I was like, yes, like I want to lift heavy
Oh,
again and I want to get stronger and like it was really good.
yeah.
So she's the best, Dr. Kate.
Wow. Dr. Kate. Shout
Yeah.
out to Dr. Kate.
I think
Wow.
that was like a total tangent on what your question was.
No, that was great. Yeah, and it's just so interesting how it started. It didn't start from a good place, and that
No,
kind of
yeah.
was the
Even
foundation
though
of
I
it.
thought I was trying to make good out of it,
Right.
but that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like anybody who would like, who maybe like saw me or knew me would be like, "Oh, good job, like
Right.
good sticking to your goals." And
And
I
like, you
was
look
sticking,
great,
yeah. But I
yeah.
was like, they have no idea that this started from a panic attack. So like, and I
Right.
wasn't just about to like go and like be
Oh,
like, "Oh,
really?
by the way,
Because
thanks, yeah." Like,
yeah.
no. But I wish I would have,
Right.
It's in some ways, even though it's
Yeah.
still not quite.
Right. Yeah, I just am so curious about, well, I guess it started from a panic attack,
Mm-hmm.
and the purpose of you doing it. I actually don't know what question I'm trying to ask.
Mm.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, I feel like when I started my own fitness
Journey, yes.
journey, I was just doing it for sports for school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing it to like win and just to be really good.
Yeah,
And I wasn't doing
yeah.
it because it felt good for me. I was doing it
Mm-hmm.
for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a good moral like balance is like, okay, how do I feel right now?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? And the looks kind of come with it,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's just more important to make sure that you're feeling good.
Feeling good. And that's why like even like the first couple months I was doing it, I felt good. I had more energy and like
Okay.
I was feeling good. And then I just reached a point where like my body fat percentage was too low and I was not feeling good, like
Okay.
physically
And
or
it didn't
mentally.
last.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what I would say, like, oh, I wish I would have XYZ. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I just thought it was like a matter of like sticking to my like routine.
Yeah.
But I think there is a point where it's like, oh, I'm having these like really extreme, like hormonal whatevers
Yeah.
every month now. Like maybe I should like chill.
Right.
Um, but back to like when like looking at this like big kick like in the media and just like in
Right.
general people like doing diets, and I will say first of all it can be very confusing because everyone has like their own like
Yeah.
their nutrition plan is like their religion and they like swear
Yes.
by it, and I think sometimes too it's so confusing because like all these studies are different and like contesting each other, but
Yes.
I think a good mindset overall is just to think like how much can I eat and still achieve my goals? Like you should enjoy eating, you should enjoy moving, and
Mhm.
like anything that you're doing to like measure yourself or your journey along with that is just data. And I think like we get super emotional about the scale or about the
Mhm.
number of calories, like all that stuff, or like our measurements, but it's just raw data and you don't need to be as hard as that. It's easier said than done, but like
Right.
getting like an emotion attached to it. But
Right.
I think a good goal is just like I want to move a lot. I want to like be able to do these hikes and like lift this much
Right.
weight and like jump this high. And I want to
Yes.
enjoy my food and I want it to be like whole and nourishing to me and like
Yeah.
not full of like, ultra processed artificial garbage. So
Yes. Yeah, that is I think when it changed for me when I finally was doing something and I was like, cuz before when I was like running track and I
mhm.
was just like in the heat of it and the
Yeah.
coaches just really were pushing me really hard
Yeah.
and I would just like, I don't know if this is TMI, but I would just
Yeah.
like throw up every time after I would run.
Yeah.
And it was just became like a habit for me.
Mhm.
And then finally when I got into CrossFit later
Mhm.
and I finally was able to be like, okay, I'm pushing myself too hard. I'm going to stop and it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's like finally being able to know how to like, yeah,
Just
stop and
know
start.
where
Where the
the your
line
point
is.
where the line is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's like common, even if not necessarily within exercise in itself, but like yours was, I'm not going hard enough until I throw up, but
Right.
until you were like, oh, like I'm still like putting in really good work. I'm still building
Right.
muscle, building speed, and I'm going to stop when it's necessary so I
Right.
don't torture my body.
Yeah, stop torturing
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the brain
Yeah.
is so crazy. The
It is
bodies are crazy
crazy,
that it
yeah, and
makes
it,
you.
like, logs weird information sometimes, like, I
Yeah.
know I've talked to some of my friends who they were like, "Oh, yeah, if, like, I woke up feeling, like, starving, I felt proud of myself," and I was like, "Oh." like I
No.
know, and like it's weird how we like trick ourselves into being like this is what's like success is and like this is what progress and
Right.
diligence is, whereas like you can't do that every day, and
Right.
yeah,
It doesn't
it
last.
does
It
not
doesn't last.
last.
Yeah.
Plus, if
And
it's like, sorry,
no,
another
go for
thought.
it.
If it is getting in the way of like your, like we'll say like your happiness, like if you feel good, like we were talking about,
Right.
and your relationships,
Oh,
that
yeah.
I think is so big because they've done several studies on like the number one indicator of your health and longevity is how healthy your relationships are and like
Yeah,
how
I just
intimate.
read that.
Yeah. And like that over and over again, it's like you should still be spending time with friends and doing things you like with them. And if your like obsession with like eating or doing certain movements is getting in the way of that, then like that's something just to like be aware of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
It shouldn't get in the way of that. Um and so with you have a lot of knowledge. You're very knowledgeable. And
That's okay, really quick. I
oh
am
yeah.
not a professional, and
Okay.
anything I say on this, like, can and should be used against me.
Okay.
No, I like. I feel like it's fair for me to be like, hey, I'm just a person. I studied political science. I didn't even study like nutrition or
Okay.
exercise science, but I've been through a lot of things, and I feel like I still am like valid in saying that I have experience with different things, but I still have a lot that I don't know. So
Right.
yeah, but
Yeah, that
thank
is
you.
good to
Yeah,
say that.
but I feel like I have a passion and an interest, so
Right.
I like to talk about what I think I
Yeah.
know.
And there's like clearly lots of research behind it.
Yeah,
Like you do know what you're
yeah,
talking about.
okay, yeah, that's good.
Yes. Um so speaking of that, would you share some of your insights on food production and the politics
Yes.
behind that?
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
so that's I think where I want professionally to like go in my life is do more research on like global food systems
Mhm.
and nutrition, hunger, all that. Um, it started, the very first political science class I took here was with Dr. Blimes, and it was the politics and economics of the developing world. So, talking about like global poverty and low income countries and the struggles with that.
Mhm.
And I wrote a paper about the like food insecurity among American Indian reservations because I'm from Montana and I'm like
Right.
familiar with some of the reservations there. And a lot of them live on what's considered like a food desert. And we're in the United States, like the richest country in the world, but we have a lot of communities who are either food insecure or experience hunger. And that's just like baffled me.
Yeah.
Um, and these people, because of different policies, because of like the different way like the economy is set up, just aren't being given, I think, the proper attention and help that they need, and not even that they like, not that they solely like have to depend on like outside help, but even things like they hadn't been given the same like hunting license to hunt for like traditional American Indian food. And
Mm.
so I like in my paper I was like arguing like, oh, what if we provided them like built more grocery stores instead of fast food restaurants there, spread like education and like pushed to like get back into like ancestral eating habits and like let them hunt for like give them more, I don't even know what the word is, but like you can shoot like a certain amount of like elk or buffalo or
Right.
whatever per year. But I think like if you're registered on a reservation, like you should be allotted to like have more.
Okay.
I forget what the word is for that. But
I couldn't tell you.
yeah, thank you. But yeah, I that's what like really got me thinking about it. And like throughout all this, like I was doing Foodie Friday. Like I love
Right.
food. I love like the excitement that it is, but also realizing like how it really is like a privilege for a lot of people. It can be like sacred for people who've like been through
Right.
times of famine or even just times in like personal lives. Like I grew up under the poverty line, like
Mhm.
single parent household. And I didn't actually know this, but and again, this might be TMI if like I don't know if anyone cares, but like
Right.
my sister told me recently there was a time when we were little where her and my mom were sharing a part-time job and all we had in the house to eat was mac and cheese. And I didn't remember this, but it just really opened my eyes. Like I knew growing up was a struggle. And like when we did have, more resources, or like when we were in a somewhat better spot, like my mom was very good about like giving us nutritious food and like everything, she like did her best. But there are times like you're down
Yeah.
on your luck and you
You just
don't
have to do
have
with
that.
what you
Yeah.
yeah, do with what you got.
And I think that has like really distilled in me like a huge love and appreciation for beautiful, nutritious food, because not everyone has that.
Right.
So, but more about like food systems, food production. There's some things like I just think in a lot of ways our food system is broken, and over a third of food globally is wasted.
Wow.
I'm not here to like totally like diss on capitalism, but I think it does play a role. Like
Right.
supermarkets want to sell like the prettiest looking things, and then like what happens to like the apples that aren't super shiny? Like, do they not get sold? Do they go to waste? Like, are they
Right.
really being used? I think understanding our economy and our global economy helps us understand some of the implications of that and how to navigate it, and how like really we as consumers, like at least in America, I can say more assuredly that like your dollar is your vote. So when you're going to the grocery store, you can vote for, like you can buy from brands that like are more ethical, do like a
Yeah.
better job, and like sell more whole foods, because I feel like a lot of times we're trying to just get marketed to buy yummy things that aren't good for
Yes.
us. And I don't know, I'm more of like an advocate for like it's hard to say like do your research on every single brand of like food
Yeah,
that you're
but
gonna
it
buy,
is good
but
to know what you're putting in
yeah,
your body.
what you're
Like you
putting in
have
your
to know
body and
what
who
you're
you're
doing.
supporting by
Right.
buying that piece of food. So
Yes.
yeah.
That is so fascinating.
Yeah. I think my like dream is to like study more, or like write about I don't know if this has really been done. From what I've looked into, it hasn't yet, but um let me backtrack a little. There's a marker, an economic sort of marker called green GDP. And there's some like databases where they try to look at a country's GDP, but also less the cost of like the damages that climate change has done on it,
Okay.
or like the things we're producing that's like harming us, like climate wise.
Right.
And so they have like green GDP. So it's like, okay, like maybe US and China are like, you know, we have this much GDP and we're growing at this rate, but the rate at which we're also destroying our crops and destroying like other systems and,
Yeah.
air and the seas and everything, it's like costing us more than we're producing or like growing economically. So I would love to look into like nutrition GDP. Like
Yeah.
how much are we spending on like nutritional, maybe not so much deficiencies here, but like diseases that we have, chronic diseases that like could be prevented through like proper nutrition and health, or like, you know, subtracting that from our overall GDP and like our economic growth. So I think that'd be a fascinating thing
Yeah.
to look at, to like help shape policy too, to say we need to fix some things here before we could, really consider ourselves as progressive, I think, as we
Yes.
think we are.
That would give a lot of information about
Yeah.
probably some holes in
Yeah. It's crazy too. Oh, there's some other things. I just closed my laptop. There's a lot of social injustice issues around food systems. In many cultures around the world, women and girls often eat last and eat least. As a result, women and girls represent 60% of all undernourished people globally. So there's so
Wow.
many different things that, like, our food system is so connected to everything. Like,
Yeah.
it's not separate from culture, it's not separate from business and
Mhm.
all that. So,
Yeah, maybe in the comments section of this podcast we can list some of like those research
yes.
places where you
Yeah,
kind of draw from that. Just I feel
totally.
like after especially after like talking with you, it's like I
Yeah.
definitely want to look
Look
more
into
into
that. I
stuff.
think
Yeah.
a couple of those things, like at least in the past couple minutes, we've been
Mhm.
talking about like global food systems. I follow Nutrition International
Okay.
organization. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they do a lot with like food systems. The World Food Program from the UN, United
Okay.
Nations. There's a lot. There's a ton of NGOs that also like you'd have to like look into their studies, of course, but they do share a lot of this information
Right.
about it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And with for myself and anyone listening who are looking into having a more healthy lifestyle,
Mhm.
if you just had a bit of advice, we've kind of talked about some
Yeah.
advice this whole time, but
Like where to start, I
yeah,
guess.
where to start?
I think number one is to. Okay, number one. I actually like.
There's a few number ones.
There's a few number ones. Like, I think it's really important to like love and like we talked about, love and appreciate where you are and who you
Right.
are right now. Whether that's I used to do like verbal affirmations in the morning to like help my like body image.
Yeah.
I think following that, setting a goal is one of the most motivating things you can do. And I think you should have goals that are both like to be goals and to do goals. So like to be, I think are things like you can't check off. Like I want to be a water drinker. I want to be a runner. I want to be a weight lifter. And so like those are things like if you have that as your goal, you'll just get up and do it anyway because you're like this is the type of person that I am. Like I don't have to necessarily like check it off for every day because it's just like ingrained. It's part of me.
Goal.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it's also good if you wanted to say like, oh, I want to be able to deadlift 225 pounds. I want to like you like have other goals, or maybe it is like, I want to just start a food journal and just start logging what I eat, and then maybe from there down the road, once you get into that habit, you can be like, okay, maybe I'll start a deficit or a bulk. Like,
Right.
I think it's really exciting and motivating to have goals because when you start to make progress, no matter how little it is, that like propels you even further. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap this up, is there anything that we haven't talked about or discussed that you think is beneficial to say before? If not, that's okay.
Beneficial to say. I think health can be super stressful and super touchy. I know like it's a fine you have to walk a fine line sometimes because like I want to inspire and help people to like eat healthier, choose healthier things, but I never want to be the person to be like, "Why are you eating that?" or "What do you eat?"
Yeah,
like that's really hard for yeah.
Yeah.
And there's different reasons you could be eating like a chunky cookie. Like it might be like super good for your mental health that day.
Yeah,
like,
that could spike
there's
some
like
good serotonin.
there's not like they say not to like demonize food or like what do they say like say good and bad foods like food is food. But
Oh, yeah.
things I think it's good to start just trying to get good education on nutrition.
Yes.
And that unfortunately does not usually come from social media because people tend to have like different motives when they're sharing quote unquote education. Some of them are like legit and some of them are
Right.
good. But I say podcasts, Andrew Huberman, he has super long podcasts. He's probably like one of the best nutrition podcasters. But like
Andrew Huberman.
Okay. I think he's a Harvard nutrition professor, researcher,
Okay.
neuroscientist, something like that. But Andrew Huberman, my favorite podcast that I listen to like all the time is called The Model Health Show. Model as in like what we should like model our lives after, not like supermodel. No, it's
like
The Model Health Show with Sean Stevenson. I listen to another podcast called Food Tank, and that's more about like food policy.
Okay.
Read books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just I think the education part of it is like really fascinating and really helpful instead of purely being like, oh, here's an image, I want to look like that.
Yeah.
What can I do to whatever. So
yeah. Wow. That's perfect. I've just been enriched and enlightened.
Oh, good.
Thank you,
Yes,
Emarie,
thank
so
you.
much for joining us.
Yeah.
I guess me.
Yeah.
There's no one else here.
Oh, yeah.
But to our listeners, If you or one of your friends has a story they'd like to share, you're welcome to reach out to us at Alaka'i News on Instagram or Facebook. And thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye.